Good day, everyone. The Legal Innovation Summit reminded us that while technology, AI, and digital transformation is reshaping the business and the practice of law, none of it is resilient as our people or purposeful leadership. Innovation is not only about systems, it's about people and how we empower them to thrive. It's against this backdrop that leading with resilience in the workplace brings the conversation full circle. The panel discussion today is a candid conversation about how leaders can sustain well-being, foster a culture of care, guide the teams across functions, across generations, and in a world where there is constant and relentless change. It's about recognizing how true transformation demands not just technical solutions, but a human-centered approach. With this perspective from big law, legal innovation, entrepreneurs, and the judiciary, our discussion shines a light on the most essential resource we have in our profession, and that is our people. Today with me, I have a panel of experts that will unpack how leading with resilience really impacts the legal profession. My name is Naomi Thompson. I will be your moderator today. I'm the Executive Director of the Legal Innovation Summit and the founder of Catalent. Today, we have Lydia Shadrack Rezino. She is a partner and head of M&A at Baker McKenzie, South Africa, whose leaderships in high-stake transactions makes her voice on resilience a very important one for our discussion. We also have Leah Molatelli. She is a legal tech and innovation consultant, the country lead for South Africa for Saga, and also the founding director of her own business and an entrepreneur. We have Anastasia Seal-Roman, founding director of At Edom Foundation. She is an additional magistrate and is really passionate and an advocate for well-being and the legal profession, but also beyond. And last but not least, we welcome Rico Burnett. He's the managing director of innovation at Moray Global, who brings expertise at the intersection of law, technology, and innovation. Thank you very much and welcome to our discussion today. So Lydia, can I start with you? Leading in M&A is often described as performing under fire. It deals with very high stakes deadlines. Relentless pressure is constant. So in your career, when was that turning point that you realized it is beyond just the delivery, but also about self-leadership and leading within yourself, yet keeping the high-performance culture?
So thank you, Naomi, and thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be part of this panel with these wonderful women and with Rico online as well. For me, it actually happened quite quickly. It was a little bit of a shock to the system. But I'm kind of glad that it happened so quickly because it taught me what resilience was from the word go. And so what I'm talking about is when I finished university and started looking for articles, that was in the year 2001. And it was almost impossible at that stage to find articles. It was the system was still very white male dominated back then. And for young people of color, and particularly young women of color, it was really difficult. And I actually didn't realize how difficult it was going to be till I started looking. And I managed eventually to find articles at a very small law firm in Durban. It was basically a one-man shop. And he did a lot of road accident fund claims and a lot of Magcourt work, actually. Which is a baptism of fire for any article clerk. But it wasn't the dream that I'd had in my head of getting articles at a big law firm and going straight into an M&A or corporate team and learning from the best in the M&A and corporate world. I literally had to write letters to the Road Accident Fund.
Wow.
and, you know, meet with people that had an accident. It taught me a lot about interacting at a human level with clients, because, you know, these people don't have corporate issues or M&A issues, but it's at the, you know, the very basic level of, I was in an accident and I have these needs and I need this money. So what that taught me was invaluable. And also being in front of a magistrate for the first time, trying to make an argument that I had no idea what this was about, because it didn't have any training on it, right? So that for me was my first experience with resilience. It was, I had to know, I knew what I had to do. The situation that I found myself in was very, very difficult and hard, especially when my peers, some of them were at the big firms in the glamorous M&A teams, learning from the best. I had to really dig deep and still give off my best. And that's what I think resilience is about, right? Facing the hardships, facing the difficult times, digging deep, learning to rise above it, and giving off your best in those circumstances. So I still wanted to do the best RAF work that I could have done. Yeah. Still wanted to perform the best in front of a magistrate in court, even though I had no clue what was going on. And yeah, it was a mindset shift. I realized that I needed to rely on myself in order to get through this. And also, I decided that I was going to do PLT, which is the Practical Legal Training School, at night whilst doing the article. So I didn't have to do 2 years of articles. I could condense that into a year. So I did that as well. So it was, I think, 3 or 4 nights out of the week at PLT, plus all of that one-man shop work that I had to do in my articles. But I got through it, and it taught me a hell of a lot, and it really set the foundation for the career that I wanted to create for myself.
Yeah. So Lydia, it wasn't all suits and being all dressed up and your beautiful grey suits and just going down to court and winning everything. I also think that there is a context that's missing in our legal education, because we learn about these fantastic and wonderful experiences of what it's going to be like to be a lawyer. And then you walk into practice, and just that very foundations of how do you approach a magistrate, how do you get into court for the very first time is very daunting. I probably almost cried the first time I went to court, and I had to represent someone in a criminal matter. And for me, it was like, now what? How do you do this? But Rico, with that, I just want to move over to you. So Lydia mentioned that, you know, the years when she started, it was very white male dominated, which a lot of us cannot dispute. Similar experience for most of us in the room. But I've worked with you, and I understand how you have become an advocate to support people. You've moved from big law into what is now an innovation, technology, and that cross-sector sphere. How do you ultimately find technology can enhance that human-centric approach to law, and to how it is that we can find that balance between a high-performance culture and yet putting the human first?
Naomi, thank you very much. It's a great question. And you know, I also came up through the ranks as a legal practitioner. I was lucky, focused on technology and intellectual property law. So the litigation we were involved in was quite relaxed, you know, very collegial. And yet, I think the common thread was, if you look back at that time, and I would hasten to say that this may still be true, is that legal work in general is really about almost heroic endurance. You know, to Lydia's opening comment, it's really about how much can I do, and do I have to do to actually carve out my place. And I think the challenge with that is the response that I saw in practice was just learn how to cope better, right? It's your coping mechanisms that you should grow or enhance, and that will make it all feel a little bit better. And that was a challenge. You know, in my current role, which we combine a very large legal services division, and now I'm lucky or unlucky enough to manage a large number of software developers, their motivations, right, and their inputs and how they find value and how they add value is very different. And what we've seen in that hybrid is you need to appreciate the fact that asking or suggesting to people that they must simply cope better, you find a mechanism, right, it is not enough. So where I think technology and to a great extent the rise of AI, right, as the newest trend there can help is we can start engineering work a little bit better, right? So the tools and the equipment we have at our disposal will allow us to look at what really is a value chain, right? With lawyers and legal practitioners sitting at the really sharp end of the value chain. If you consider any kind of transaction or litigation matter, is if you look at that value chain, things like intake, triage, basic drafting, document review, document approval, these processes and the sheer volume and the expansion of these requirements and the demands on people in legal practice and in corporate law departments is simply growing. Right? I think technology simply, it doesn't remove the stress or the tension. It removes it to different parts of that. So what we've looked at in how we deploy and build and shape technology is redesigning work. So you aren't simply saying to somebody, you're a cog in a wheel, right? You're a, what's the technical expression? You're a CPU, right? You have to run at 100% output, and that's how I define your value. Do we design for things like peaks and troughs?
Yeah.
Do we design for things like the impact of automation on certain activities? And if you can do that and really look at the value chain, where does technology really fit into that practically, not just philosophically, or what you read on a LinkedIn post or the most recent news flash? Could you do that to actually give people those small buffers of opportunity to really sit back and think about what they want to achieve and how they will achieve that? And by giving them that headspace, I think you are creating a culture of resilience. So I mean, to summarize that really is, it's hard to remove pressure. Everybody on this panel, will certainly, and Lydia's experience in Madge Court, I think, resonates. It's hard to remove that pressure, but I think you can redistribute that more effectively in having technology support your people. And that's what we're seeing some really good, positive developments from, especially because the kind of law students you see today, I think, are quite different. They are influenced and impacted by so many other factors. They're exposed to, they get told every second day that, law will change and there will be no role for attorneys anymore. And they're confronted with that. And I think that technology should present a support mechanism and not just be this looming risk. Yeah. And that's how we've started to try and augment our people by reducing and re-engineering the process of delivering work to allow them to feel like they are contributing and that they are part of a system and not just have to be an individual hero all the time.
Yeah. So will technology replace the lawyers of the future? I'll come back to you on that later. But let me move over to Leah. So Leah, Rika was talking about re-engineering processes, advising clients on how they can use technology. You are an entrepreneur, a consultant, and you really help clients to be able to deliver and how they can work better. But that does not remove the pressure from you as an individual, as a startup. How have you find that for yourself? You found that balance between also being a high performer, and advising your clients at the same time, putting your mental well-being at the core and making that a priority?
I think for me, what really saves me is staying true to my core.
Yeah.
Which is extremely hard in a world that tells you need to be something else. And when I started in legal tech, it was still very new. It was before Gen AI. It was before it was exciting, technology. And I think understanding that this is my purpose. For me, when I talk about legal tech, it's like my tiny little passion. It's like my own love story to say that it managed to change my world in terms of how I was delivering legal services. So why can I not share that with the next lawyer and reshape and reimagine how they can actually better their own lives, their own systems, because it goes beyond just them being able to deliver for their own clients, but also what they can do with the free time, either being more strategic in terms of doing legal work or having more time to spend with their children.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes our careers take a lot out of us. And we don't get the chance to actually be with the people that we are saying we're doing it for. And so for me, it became very important very early on to understand that for me, my purpose is legal tech, and that's why you'll find me advising lawyers or writing books or talking. Look where I am now, talking about legal tech, because you have to ground yourself and understand that even if you don't achieve whatever it is you had in your head at a particular timeline, you constantly have to pivot. And for me, that is what resilience is. It's understanding. And funny enough, while you are actually executing or exercising resilience, sometimes you don't see it. In the moment, you're not feeling it. It's only in hindsight. But the common thread that I've seen in my career is the ability to constantly pivot and evolve and understand that there are multiple ways within which to achieve your main objective.
Yeah. What strikes me about you is your vulnerability. And I followed your journey and your career for so many years. When it comes to social media on LinkedIn, you share those challenges that you've been through. And it's not always accepted in our profession. We always expected to show up, to be strong, to just do it, to almost fit into a particular mold. How have you found your voice to be able to be that vulnerable? And what can others learn from that journey that you have walked?
Don't care.
As simple as that.
Don't care. Or maybe it's because I'm an only child. So one, I love attention. Give me attention.
Of course.
But two, there's a point where it comes, particularly when perhaps you don't have great support systems in the beginning, where you actually find your people. And it's only in you being authentic and vulnerable that you actually find your people. And let me tell you, when you find your people, when you find your tribe, it changes everything.
Yeah.
You're able to move through so much. And you can only connect on that level, even online, by being authentic. It's the only way.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. Anastasia, you create the tribe. You create a platform for the tribe. But at the same time, you bring such a unique perspective because you have the perspective of what happens in court, where we all are very terrified to go to. So how do you find yourself being able to let other lawyers coming into that space feel comfortable, but at the same time in your work at the Eden Foundation, that platform that you create where you advocate for mental health because you've seen and you've worked with so many people across the spectrum. Share with us what is that perspective that you have.
So my perspective, thank you Naomi for the introduction and also for the invitation here today. And so my perspective comes from my experience. In 2017, I told Leah at the summit, August was actually the 8th anniversary of my post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis. And when you tell people that you've been diagnosed with PTSD, they say, oh, but you're so brave to be able to say it. I want to get to the point where it's not a bravery thing, but a common thing where people are unashamed to speak about their mental health challenges. So in 2017, in August, something happened in my family, and I told my managers, my seniors at the time, I was a prosecutor, and I loved it. I loved litigation. It became part of my personality. I couldn't separate my prosecutor personality from who I was. And what had happened was it brought me completely to a halt. And I couldn't move forward. I actually told everybody, I'm done with this job. I just want to leave. I couldn't do anything. I sought the help that I needed. And then management, of course, at that time supported me in the way that they understood how to support me. And they said, take the time that you need, come back to work, and then you carry on. So from that, I knew I wasn't the only person struggling with mental health issues. And all of the conversations that I had brought us to the formation of the At Eden Foundation. And I always say the most valuable conversations that I've had were with the men in the fraternity. These were presiding officers, bar advocates, very well-established attorneys who told me, well, beyond myself as a man, where do I go? And so what we try to do is we include everybody's voices and everybody's perspectives. And I always say now to the young legal practitioners appearing in front of me, when they are nervous, when they are perhaps agitated and they don't know what to do and what to say, I'm there to guide. I've been where you are. So there's no shame in learning, or there's no shame in asking. But what I have found now, which is unfortunate, is that many of them don't feel comfortable going to ask their principal for assistance. And that to me is still the problem. Even though we have this platform here today, the concerning thing is we are sending new lawyers still out on their own. So I find I create the environment in my courtroom, in my chambers, that is welcoming, because I knew what it felt like to be ostracized for showing weakness, if I can term it as that, because you're not supposed to show weakness as a lawyer, and more especially as a prosecutor. When you say you're struggling with anything, I carried shame because I was diagnosed with PTSD, and it wasn't even something that I'd done. It's something that happened to me. And so when I engage with younger lawyers, I come from that perspective of I was where you were, and so how do we navigate and change the legal industry, whether it's only your appearance in front of me, but I carry that with me where I was where you were, and how do we change what the reputation of the fraternity is from today, and how do we move forward with. So hopefully nobody appears in front of me who feels intimidated by by myself, yes.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for just opening up that conversation around how we as leaders can create enabling environments for our teams that are going through some of the mental health challenges. Lydia, so from your perspective in your current role where you are at, how do you create that enabling environment for your team to be able to be vulnerable? For you, I know for women, it's sometimes frowned upon, especially for us, to show some of that weakness, but at the same time, we come to work as the entire us. You cannot just close the door and leave a part of you behind. So how do you lead in an environment like that?
So I think as a start, we must just accept that the finance and legal fraternities are high stakes, high pressure environments.
100%.
I don't think that we can sugarcoat that or move away from that. It is what it is because of the stakes that are at risk, right? So you go into those environments knowing, I think the first thing you do is you know the environment that you are stepping into. But that doesn't mean that it needs to be cold and harsh and nasty, right? We expect high performance because our clients expect high performance. And in order to be at the top of our games, we must give that high performance to our clients. But people do show up as themselves, and you bring your best self, and sometimes you bring your worst self, right? Because you don't have a choice in some instances. So I think the first thing from a leadership perspective is also then accepting that not everybody is going to be their best self every single day. That's the first thing for me. The second thing is we work in teams. This is not an individual sport, right? We need to be aligned with what our goals are and what we want to achieve as a team. And knowing that people are sometimes going to have an off day, an off moment, an hour, a couple of hours a week, if you communicate as a team about what's going on with you, it makes it a lot easier for the rest of the team to cover for you. And I try to make that as clear as I possibly can to my team, that we are a team. So if something goes wrong, let's talk about it, because there'll be someone else that's having a better day and can pick up that slack and help you. So the alignment, the communication, the ability to communicate and say when you're having a crazy day or something's going on in your personal life that you need some assistance and some help with, I think is absolutely key. So for me, it boils down to communication, actually. And the other thing is, as a leader, I think we must be brave enough to show vulnerability. Because if we are not brave enough to do it, our teams are not going to learn that that's okay. So in our world, vulnerability is often seen as a weakness. It just is. And it's also particularly different for men and for women. But it's seen as a weakness because our culture, the legal culture and the finance culture, prizes control, confidence, and authority. And it requires you to have this like unshakable composure in most circumstances. And that's just, we're human. And we can't be that way all the time. There are moments when you have to be that way. So in a high-stake negotiation, I'm not going to show vulnerability in that moment. I'm going to bring that unshakable composure. But in a moment where I am dealing with something that's really difficult in my life and I need my team to help me and to cover for me, I must be able to share with my team, guys, this is what's happening with me today or this week. I need some extra help. And if that team has been working together and is a solid team and trusts each other, there's no way you're not going to get the help that you need in those circumstances. And then that vulnerability dynamic is very different for men and for women, right? When men display vulnerability, it's seen as courageous and brave and authentic. When women display vulnerability, it's a lack of confidence and weakness, and everyone was expecting, and emotional, and everyone is expecting that to happen. But I do feel like society and the legal fraternity and the finance fraternity are changing, and we are more accepting of displays of vulnerability. There's a shift to that being, to that adding to credibility as opposed to risking credibility. And in my view, I think, if you're concerned about displaying vulnerability, rather start on a measured basis. You don't have to walk it.
In like me.
Not necessarily, but different strokes for and dip your toe in the vulnerability pool and see how it works out for you. And there's different people that are going to have different reactions to your vulnerability as well. So what I find is a really nice way to start, or a good tool, is when you don't know something, to actually say, I don't know. But provide a solution when you say you don't know. I don't know, but I will do my best to find the answer. Or I will work on a solution. Or I actually need to sleep on that. I really dislike being presented with a complex question or scenario and being forced to find an answer for it immediately, when the best thing to do is take a step back, reflect, and the answer comes in the quiet time and when you're thinking more clearly. And I think that's a show and a demonstration of vulnerability, when you're able to say, I need to think about this issue. And I've been trying that over the last couple of years, and it works like a charm. It's so much. It adds so much more credibility to what we do.
Absolutely. Rico, so you and I often talk about the billable hour and the time that we constantly have to put in, especially as a practicing lawyer. Do you think that as the legal profession, we are using technology almost as a band-aid, not to deal with the hard questions? And like Lydia was saying, it takes leadership to emulate that kind of how we want our teams to show up. What are your views on that?
Thank you, Naomi. I think that's a really interesting question. And unfortunately, at the moment, right, we are simply bombarded with what is the next legal technology which will solve this problem, and what we forget is that creates the sense of technical debt, right? I'm a little bit behind because I haven't invested in this tool or this platform or partnered with this organization. And what that leads to, I fear, and this is something you and I have talked about, is, this human debt, the pressure that gets put on people that ultimately have to do the engineering of those solutions, the interpreting of that to clients, assess the risk, the compliance issues, these things which legal professionals are trained and are still the only ones that should be doing any of that. So it does create this slight two worlds moving a little bit apart. And that's where the leader, and Lydia makes that great point, where the leader has to step in to demonstrate almost a level of vulnerability which says, I am with you in this challenge, right? We face this somewhat uncertain impact. And the discussion really is about, is the billable hour or alternative fees or any of these arrangements, will that be easier for the worlds of client and lawyer or legal advisor to come together? I do, without being cynical, we love technology. As a business at Murray, we test and deploy and play with all of these things. But I think frequently it's seen as a way to simply fill a capacity gap, right? We don't have X answer, or we don't have X resource available. This is going to be the platform to solve that. And what that means is we create this almost a dependency, and we aren't pulling that thread back to the growth of my team, their development. Are they in fact learning how to master the technology and therefore add value to their own growth and to their clients? So it is a little bit of maybe of a deflection of what the true potential of the technology is, which is really to augment how, us older lawyers are struggling a little bit more to get to grips with the full impact, but specifically the younger lawyers and younger practitioners coming through the ranks presents an opportunity. But they get equipped with all of these great tools and these plugins and apps on their laptops, and then they get put into a very high demanding, high performance, outcome driven environment, like Lydia has said. And that is difficult to merge those two things. A quick point, which I want to just latch onto that, Naomi, which we talked about frequently as well, is if you think about the technology space, specifically software development, the people behind all of these applications, in a sense that still mirrors how legal practice was for almost everybody, expressing their experience on the panel. Foundationally, female developers, software developers, represent a very small group within this field. And that means that there is limited diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, and you are simply not seeing the wealth of input you can. And we see that when you try and coach and mentor starters in the business. So yes, I would agree with your statement that we have an opportunity to leverage technology in the right way, right? To embed applications, to automate workflows, to give new outcomes to our clients. But I do not think we are realizing the impact that has and the human pressure it puts on what really is still your competitive advantage, and will be the only thing that will remain your competitive advantage when all technology becomes ubiquitous and is just widely deployed and everybody's using everything that they can, is your human capital and the people that are enthused and the people that are positive and that have to actually work with their clients and give them the outcomes they need and exercise judgment and exercise quality control. I think technology is creating a bit more of a gap than it needs to. And we as leaders have to really recognize that, because if we don't see that pressure mounting, our teams will feel that before we get to actually do something about it. And that's a concern that I think we share.
Yeah. And for me, it's about being intentional about two things. When you use technology and you're actually giving yourself that extra 10, 20 minutes to take that time, because it's so easy to fill it up with what's next. We are all high performers. You all want to deliver. And then second intentionality that we need to bring into the legal profession is the diversity of thought. We all are lawyers. We are trained to think a particular way. But if you bring different thoughts to the table, you get rid of the group thinking and you actually bring new ideas on how we can be human-centered to the table. So Anastasia, what do you see as still some of the blind spots that we have as the profession? And what do you think as lawyers, as professionals, we can do differently to bring solutions to some of the mental health challenges that you've come across?
So some of the blind spots that I see, and it pertains also to my diagnosis. So the habit is to, okay, we remove you from the work environment, we have you treated, or we bring EPWP in, and then you come back and now you are whole and you have to reintegrate within the team. It doesn't work that way. On a human level, how do you reintegrate if you're carrying the shame of the diagnosis firstly, and everybody's looking at you because you showed weakness, if I can put it like that. The other thing also that I think is a blind spot, a lot of us, and Leah I think will touch on it as well, are economic migrants. So employers very often say, oh, but you should be so grateful that you have a job within this climate. I'm an economic migrant. I come from Cape Town. I'm working in Gauteng, and it's very difficult because now I've had to give up my support structure, both emotionally and otherwise. I have to find new service providers. And the other question when we did the workshop with prosecutors a few years ago that I asked was, how many people are dependent on your income? Because if you're migrating from one province to another, you not only have to manage your own household financially, there are people back home who are dependent on you. And so when you stand in front of an employer or a new employer and you have to integrate and acclimate into this new environment, what is told to you very often by leaders is, you should be so grateful you're here, and you should be so grateful for this opportunity, but they neglect the grief of the loss that you suffered because I'm away from everybody that I know, everything that is familiar to myself, and I still have to show up professionally, I still have to show up on time, I still have to consult with people, but the mental drainage that has happened there is very often overlooked. So if we're thinking or we're speaking about change when it comes to human-centered leadership or human-centered AI, however you want to term it, look at how you treat the humans in front of you and how you then amalgamate the two aspects. That is just my point. And on Lydia's point of vulnerability and authenticity, the word is thrown around very often about, oh, you have to be authentic, but how do you create that environment where people are able to be authentic or are able to be vulnerable? And I always say, as much as we can say it's up to our leadership to create this environment, it's also up to myself. If I believe strongly in I need an authentic or psychologically safe workplace, I also have to do the work. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I cannot believe we've come to the end of this and we have 2 minutes left. I want to give each of you just one sentence of either practical advice that you'd give your younger self on what we can do to take this conversation forward in our workplace. Leah, I'll start with you.
I think what I would tell my younger self is to really believe in yourself. It's just a hard, wishy-washy concept, but it's important because it strengthens your resolve around speaking up for yourself, around getting a diagnosis or communicating to say, hey, I need help. So it's important to really genuinely just believe in yourself and own it. It'll open so many doors because your people will see you and everything will literally fall into place.
Thank you. Lydia?
So Mandela said, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And I think that I would remind my younger self of that. And also to eat better and train harder.
Yes, that's very important. Rico, yours?
Thanks, Naomi. First off, I think all the panelists have demonstrated resilience, right, in speaking about that different experiences and how that lived experience in different contexts is valuable. I want to make one statement or final statement. I think resilience is built and nurtured, but it's built in small moments, little initiatives, rituals, small check-ins, understanding the people that you manage or you work with or you consult with. And I think that compounds over time, and we should not ignore the value of these small tokens, these small actions that we can take. And it doesn't matter how small they are, because they will in time create the culture that we need to manage and create the resilient future for the profession that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you. Anastasia?
I was told when I started out, I'm too soft and I'm too kind and I'm too this and I'm not strong enough to be a litigator. But now, having walked the path that I have, I can see from your shared experiences about the courtroom, there's a place for softness. Yes. There was always a place for softness when I was a prosecutor, and there's a place for softness now as a presiding officer, because I can bring that same softness and kindness to the parties who appear before me.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts, for sharing your lived experiences. From me, it's always about feeling the fear, doing it anyway, as well as failure is not fatal. The legal profession is made out of people, and people will always fail, but it is in the failure that you learn the most. It's in the failure that you actually step up to the next level. So let's keep people at the heart of what we do. Please engage with the panel on their various social media platforms. I wish we had more time to go deeper into this discussion, but this is not the end of talking about mental health and resilience in the workplace. So I thank you very much for joining in, and once again, thank you very much to all our panelists.